The number 9 ranked light heavyweight Paul Craig out of Scotland looking to drop down to middleweight for the first time in his career at age 35, taking on the number 14th ranked middleweight. It is Andrea Muniz. And when we look at a fight like this, Matt, for Paul Craig, bumps in the road, ups and downs, he has so many. 7 performance bonuses in the UFC, 6 submission wins in the light heavyweight division. That's tied. That is second of all time in that light heavyweight division. Only one below Glover Teixeira for the record at 205. But for Craig, he moves down to 185 and he takes on Muniz, just the arm snatcher. You saw him beat Bartosz Fabinski. Cinching that choke, you saw him break Jacare Souza's arm, and that was just so tough. It was tough for me to even say. But for Muniz's last time out, the impromptu main event, it was supposed to be Krylov versus Spann. It ends up Muniz versus Allen on the fight on the night. And Brendan Allen was able to strike on the outside, out-wrestle, out-grapple, and submit Andrea Muniz. And Brendan Allen's done good things even since then. Now Muniz gets to try and stack the deck again. And he was on a tidy little win streak. He went from losing to Azamat Murzakanov on the regional scene to a giant win streak, 2 fights on Contender Series 2018-2019, a win over Antonio Arroyo in the UFC. That kind of threw like beer goggles version of Thiago Santos, and off to the races for Muniz. But when I look at a fight like this, I don't like guys at 35 moving down a weight class for the first time in their career, coming off a knockout loss. Go ahead.
What does Paul Craig gain from fighting at 185? What about his skill set gets better is my question, because a lot of times when guys either move up or down in weight class, let's say move up in weight class, you're going to have a big speed advantage over your opponents now, or you move down in weight. Cody Garbrandt, Kai France, didn't work out, but you get the idea. You're supposed to have a power advantage. For Paul Craig, his BJJ is the thing that got him to the dance, right? It makes him so lethal against everybody. Unless his wrestling gets so much better from these, I guess, 20 pounds less, I just don't know what Paul Craig's going to do all that different at middleweight they did at 205.
Yeah, this is what I struggle with. We had a fighter who had the similar skill sets to Paul Craig, and I would argue at times was a better striker. Do this from 205 to 185. It didn't work, and then he moved back up to 205. It's Latvian-Canadian Misha Serkinov. And he moved down to 185, and he fought Krzysztof Jotko, and just went takedown, and couldn't get anything going. And then he fought Wellington Turman, and he looked like he was going to finish him, and then all of a sudden, he ends up getting caught in a submission, and he loses. So, for me, with Serkinov, with Paul Craig, late in the career, moving down to 185, I don't necessarily love it. And for Craig, one of those performance bonuses, a win over Luis Enrique. If you look at it for Andrea Muniz at a Tata fight team, third-degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, who's in the corner? Who's training with him? Luis Enrique.
I have to bring this up. Do you think Paul Craig at the age of 35 walks around and says, I'm 6'1"?
6'3.5".
6'3.5", that's all. I don't think people after the age of 11 worry about half inches anymore. But for Paul Craig, that's really what this whole weight class
Stephen
comes down
Struve
to.
was always 6'11.5".
Because he didn't want to be classified as a 7-footer.
Exactly.
It's like Kevin Durant, okay? Paul Craig probably doesn't walk around and go, I'm 6'3.5", yeah? Like, that would just be insane. He's a pretty hard dude from Scotland. I don't think he's worried about half inches.
Who scares you more in a dimly lit alley walking down the way? Is it Andrea Muniz or is it Paul Craig? It's Paul Craig for me,
odd thing is,
down.
I think both guys seem... Like, Paul Craig seems like the nicest guy when he does interviews. He's just, like, pretty jolly about stuff. Again, I just keep on coming back to how much better can Craig's jiu-jitsu wrestling look at 185? Because Paul Craig is one of these fighters. We talked about it a bit with Ketlen Vieira, right? The BJJ is so lethal. We understand if he gets them down to the mat, the fight is basically over. But how good is the wrestling to get them down to the mat? Paul Craig's not Kevin Lee. He's definitely not, like, even Kevin Lee on the feet. So for Craig, that one area is so strong. I just always worry about, can he fill in the rest? Now, I liken him a lot to buddy who just fought Dan Hooker. I can't remember. I'm forgetting the name.
Jalen Turner?
No. The fight before that where he pulled guard the whole time.
Claudio Puelles.
Claudio Puelles and Paul Craig are very much in the same camp. To where, yes, what they do might not always look aesthetically pleasing. You might look at their losses and think, wow, this is the worst fighter in the UFC. But you can't let that overshadow the strengths they do bring in. And for Paul Craig, and I'm going to throw you under the bus a bit. I feel like he picked up against Paul Craig for a while in a lot of his fights. But Paul Craig's one of those guys who, if he just... for 1 second, he can lose every minute of every single round. If he gets the fight to where he wants it for that 1 second, it's over. It doesn't matter how good you are.
Because he did it one time against Magomed Ankalaev, and now it's a forever thing.
I think his jiu-jitsu's that lethal, though.
Paul Craig, 0 of 15 on takedowns against Volkan Oezdemir, 330-27s. That fight was in London, so we'll see if Paul Craig can bounce back off those 2 losses. And for Muniz, if he can come back off that Brendan Allen loss. Because for Muniz, He'll throw leg kicks, he'll throw hammers to close the distance, to get his own takedowns. He is a good wrestler in his own volition, but we'll see how it plays out. Matt, Muniz is favored. We have looked at the Topology votes. Surprised to us as they are
I have
to
a hard
you.
time.
I'm going to say over-under. I don't think it's going to be close. I'm going to say over-under 70% Muniz.
I think it's going to be under, personally.
What the heck? You saw these.
No.
840 total votes, 66% Muniz, 44% by decision, 33% by submission. For the 34% that have Craig, 74% by submission. So a lot of people seeing a submission in this one. I do think Andrea Muniz wins this at middleweight.
I think Andrea Muniz wins this at middleweight, but I will say this. Paul Craig swims in those exact same waters as Andrea Muniz does. Like, if Muniz gets him down 5 seconds into the game, it's not over like it is in a lot of matchups that you assume with Andrea Muniz. I do think Paul Craig's going to offer quite a bit off his back to make this fight really interesting, and hopefully we do get some fun scrambles, right? Like, I hope it's just not, okay, whoever gets the first takedown, they're going to be good enough to just stay on top. I think it is going to be an interesting matchup. We're going to get some good scrambles, but I agree with you. I've got
And
Muniz.
if Muniz throws the kick to the body, Paul, if you're listening, don't grab it, because those hammer fists against Johnny Walker just beat his
Lethal.
face in. They were terrible. Matt, both of us going with Andrea Muniz to get the win in the matchup. Let us know what you have down below in the comments section. Nathaniel Woods fighting Andre Fili.
fight.
You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.